African farmer Mogaji, a farmer and partner Green Collar Jobs Initiative, joins me to talk about this. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
So, is the tomato paste as an industry ripe for investment?
Yes, it is.
But if it is ripe for investment, how come we're importing so much? About 151,000 metric tons of tomato paste.
Okay, you know, a woman can be pregnant to deliver in 9 months, but the pregnancy can be delayed. Okay, so what we are having now is that we have the industry ready, but the necessary infrastructure is not available yet, so which poses a risk to the investors. However, the industry is ready.
Okay, so the infrastructure, is it different from the ones that, the infrastructure challenge, is it different from the challenges that we already know, which is roads, road networks, electricity, equipment, and the rest of it?
Well, primarily production point of view.
Okay.
Now, if you have electricity ready, you have good roads, climate change is a game changer now. This year now, it changed all the dynamics. It didn't rain for almost 45 days now, in some places 50 days. So you have, like presently now, tomatoes, 40, 50 kg basket goes for about 8 to 10,000. And ideally, around this time, it should be 4,000, 3,000. So if you have all this, the infrastructure ready, you have the investors ready, and you have climate change issues not paid attention to, then when there's no raw material, the business will fold up.
But then, you know, there's been talk about providing irrigation for times like this to ensure that all year round, some kind of food product, whether it's tomato, whether it's corn, whether it's rice or not rice, whether it's tomato, corn, or any other of all these other products that you don't need, like for the swampy areas and the rest of it to produce, will be had all year round. And so tomato actually falls into that category. But why don't we seem to have enough irrigation for this particular industry that's supposed to be a huge revenue earner?
Yes, we have irrigation. However, we've not updated what we have. Most of the irrigation we have is primarily in the northern part of the country, and it's flood irrigation, meaning it's like a fish pond. And tomatoes don't do well when it's waterlogged. But in the dry season, you find all those irrigation projects, mostly in the northern part of the country, most of them planting tomatoes, peppers. However, during the rainy season, we need drip irrigation. We've not had, I can say, I'll put like a 1% investment of federal government, states, local government into drip irrigation. So when it's not raining, we need drip. Drip conserves more water. So we've not invested in that aspect. And the irrigation systems that we have were developed 30, 20-something, 40 years ago. So things have moved. We need to conserve water because water is not readily available like it used to be. So drip irrigation and some other micro sprinklers which don't discharge water like the old ones. So with sprinkler technology, we have old system using a lot of water. We've not moved with the current flow.
But that now becomes a major challenge, you know, because you remember that when the Central Bank of Nigeria released that list of items that were prohibited from accessing forex from the official window, tomato paste, you know, was one of those tomato paste importers will not be able to access, you know, forex. So could this help the local tomato paste manufacturing industry? But looking at that challenge that you've actually, you know, brought up now, how is that going to work?
Well, backward integration is the most important in the tomato paste or tomato value chain, which is take care of production, take care of the rural farmers. You know, I'm always talking about these rural farmers. Take care of the rural farmers, get their commitment, get their buy-in, and go and set up the factories. If you produce for 3 years before, or 2 years, and within the end of the second year, you set up your factory, then the project will be sustainable. But if you rush into putting the infrastructure in terms of the building, the equipment, and already, don't forget, all over the world, climate change is changing the dynamics. So once climate change is there, and in maybe 2-3 years now, the rivers, if you travel around Nigeria now, the rivers and the streams, most of them have dried up, and the volume of water has significantly dropped. So what that means is that there's a clear and present danger for production. So looking at it, investing in drip irrigation will help any tomato paste business to be sustainable. However, there's a lot of emphasis. The reports that come out focus on the profits and what can be made from it. And they don't talk about the challenges there. So 9 out of 10, if the private sector go and invest in tomato paste, they will meet a Waterloo, because they are not they're not giving them the whole picture. And don't forget, to get the whole picture, you need to pay attention to the rural communities where there's land and where you have the active players. So without that, I don't see tomato going forward. You still need to import.
So which means that subsector is not ripe for investment.
It is. Well, when you focus on the investor, and we need to protect the investor, okay? If we look at it from the point of view of protecting the investor, it's not right, okay? But when we look at it from the point of view of putting in what is required, it's ripe, because there's a need. We are producing like 24% in Africa. Now, Ghana needs tomatoes. When tomatoes is wasting in February, March, it comes to like 1,500, 2,000 for 50 kg basket. Ghana is deprived of tomatoes and looking for who to bring tomatoes in. So before the private sector operators go into the processing, let's begin to export to Benin, even South Africa. So let's begin to export, and when we have stabilized, then we go into processing. But before that, which most of the consultants, the known names, this model is not what they are presenting. They are presenting go into it. As against, check out the opportunities within the West Africa and Africa. Move your products there, increase commitment from the farmers, and now set up.
But how can you get increased commitment from the farmers? Because that's the local supply chain that we're talking about. And we're talking about the fact that the only way this industry can actually, move as fast as we want it to is if the local supply chain is strong enough. And do we have a strong local supply chain?
We don't. We don't have. However, we have a willing local supply chain. We have a willing local supply chain. You see, and I always say this, for the private sector to do well in agriculture, and so far, I stand to be corrected, most of the players who jump in, jump out, and you have a lot of abandoned projects across all products in the crop industry, until they know that the rural farmer is a partner, not somebody to give handouts or something to just consider. Is a partner. Once you know I'm a partner, I have major stakes, which is something good that Dangote has done. Dangote really invested first, the backward integration, invested in a seed company outside the country, bringing the seeds in, and they are producing before they go into the massive processing. However, for Dangote too, we will learn some lessons from our industry, which is the factory is good for 400,000 metric tons. However, climate change, if something changes in Kano, Jigawa, because I've been in all those places, the river basins where they plan to produce these tomatoes, what happens to the 400,000 metric tons? Okay, so if I were Dangote, considering my background, I would rather have 100,000 metric tons in 4 different geopolitical zones rather than having everything in one location. The seed companies in California, because of the drought happening in the last 5 years, they are shutting down. And California is one of the largest tomato producers in the world. So taking a cue from what is happening across the globe, getting smaller equipments in 4 locations. So if one shuts down, 3 is operational. And don't forget, youths need jobs, people want, businesses to go on. So instead of having something big, which is a major challenge for the private sector, is the figures. not the process. It's always the figures. Check the cassava processing plants now. You know, case in view, we have so many big cassava operating at 30-40%, except for maybe one in Iseyin, along that Iseyin axis. 80% of the cassava processing plants are operating less than 60%. You know, so what I'm saying is, if the private sector wants to get into our industry, I really say our industry, they really need to learn, take things smaller. Okitipupa Oil Palm, which I've been involved in the turnaround management, they have a big plant, and they have like 3 other small plants feeding different locations. So if the big plant has issues, then the remaining 3 plants are operational, and that was done during Awolowo. The wisdom provided then is still available. We just need to take that blueprint, you know, and get it. So tomato, yes, the industry is available, okay? However, the private sector may likely get it wrong when we go after this data being given all over the internet.
Okay, so now looking at that local supply chain again, you talked about the fact that when the private sector comes in, they should look at them as partners and not to be given handouts to. So apart from partnering with small-scale farmers who are primarily part of, you know, who make up the local supply chain, what else should be done?
Well, another thing that needs to be done is the input fertilizers. Now, Dangote can bring in his fertilizers, the big names can bring in their fertilizers. However, the middle and small, the fertilizers in the country as of today is still substandard as of today. Most, and I use the word most, about 70 to 80% of the chemicals, insecticides, herbicides that farmers use today also is lower quality. So when you encourage the private sector, government needs to go on the regulatory agencies to tell them, henceforth, we want this industry to work really, and oil is dropping anyway. So they need to tell the regulators, quarantine, you know, get everybody on their toes. Once they're on their toes, then if we have quality seeds, let me tell you this, tomatoes in Nigeria, there is no seed company producing tomato seeds in Nigeria. It's brought in from Netherlands and France.
So that's one angle they also have to look at.
We have to look at it.
African Farmer Mogaji, thank you for coming on the program this morning and sharing your perspectives with us.
Thank you.